Hello, everybody. It is Mike Young with Mike Young Real Estate, back with another hopefully informative real estate video for you, unless, of course, you already know all about escalation clauses. You see them behind me over there? Escalation clauses. That's what this video is about. Now, who am I? I am Mike Young. I'm a real estate agent, been licensed since 2006. And in the Raleigh area, at least, I have founded the groups Wake Forest Community Information, which you may be watching me on right now, WFCI, and Raleigh Community Information, RCI. And of course, we have a whole collection of awesome groups that span the whole Triangle region, and it's called trianglegrapevine.org. So if you're not in any of those groups, or if you're in some but don't know about others, we have like trianglefoodies.org. We've got even vegantriangle.org. We've got a group of Tesla owners in the Triangle and Raleigh areas. All that stuff is on there, of course, and all kinds of local, just community-only area groups for the whole area. Check it out. Just go to trianglegrapevine.org, which is a Facebook page, and click on the groups, and then you'll get right in there with us, and you'll just join us, ask to join, and we'll approve you soon. So anyway, let's get to the subject of this video. Escalation clauses. This obviously deals with houses, right? Real estate. And the real estate market we're in right now, in the summer of 2020, late August, I'm recording this, is a really, really strong seller's market. And a seller's market means that everything is favoring the seller right now. So if you're a buyer, you're probably going to have a hard time, especially in the lower price ranges, especially detached houses. Lower price range detached houses, meaning like 200 grand, is nearly impossible to find these days, unless you find something that has major issues with it. That's about the only thing you're going to find right now. But even if you do find something that you're interested in, how are you going to secure that property? How are you going to make sure that you get that property? Because there are people out there that are going in and putting offers in on 5, 6 houses, and they're not getting any of these homes that they want to get. So that's where the escalation clause comes into play. And basically, with an escalation clause, you are in a bidding war. You've heard that term, right, before. Bidding war. Have you guys been in a bidding war? If so, write down below, comment down below. We want to hear from you. What happened in that bidding war? What was the list price? What was the asking price? And then where did you guys end up when you finally went to contract? Let us know all of that, please, in the comments. But bidding war, you're basically buying a house at auction. I mean, that's basically what it is. The demand is so high. And of course, if you're a buyer, you want that home, right? You really want to buy that home. This is the one you want to get in there. But that's on one hand. On the other hand, you don't want to pay too much for it for several reasons. Number one, if you pay too much and you just buy the home for way too much than it's worth, you're going to feel bad about it. And if you ever have to get out of that transaction in the near future, you may find that that's very difficult or impossible, because you'd have to bring cash money to the table just to settle on that house and get rid of it. So another thing to consider, though, is that, how much do you want this property and how much can be financed? Because almost, most transactions take place with a mortgage. So, and of course, whenever you got a mortgage involved, they're going to come out and they're going to do an appraisal, and they're not going to loan you more than the appraised value. So if there's a difference between the appraised value and then where you end up with your purchase price, let's say the appraised value comes in at $250,000, you end up going under contract at $295,000. Well, that's a $45,000 difference. Now, sometimes you can make that up. Sometimes there's mistakes on the appraisals, although usually not. And in this market, if you want to buy that home, you're going to have to come up with that difference in cash. So you don't want to have to pay any more than the home is worth regardless, right? Am I right? I mean, are you willing to pay more than a home is worth? Also, let me know down there below in the comments. Let's get the discussion going down there in the comments. I'm just curious as to what you guys think. So this is where the escalation clause comes into play. Now, in North Carolina, which is where I am doing most of my business right now, where I'm licensed, we have a contract called the North Carolina Offer to Purchasing Contract. I've done several videos with it recently, some of them talking about the due diligence and the money and the time frame there, and also earnest money deposits. We got some good videos on those, so check out wherever you're watching this in the history there. You'll probably find those videos. But we need to use as realtors that contract unless you have something that's written by a real estate attorney. So an escalation clause is going to be something that is written, drafted by a real estate attorney. So they could be very different. Whereas the offer to purchase and contract is always exactly the same, the escalation clauses can vary all over the place. You can have clauses that escalate just about any term in the contract, from the price, which is the most common thing, to, I don't know, the earnest money, to the due diligence money, to all kinds of little things. You know, the sky's the limit. As I say, as is a theme here in my real estate videos, real estate is pretty much one of those things where almost anything is possible. So you really need to know what you're doing and make sure you're working with someone that's very experienced, because literally anything is possible, whether you want it to be possible or not in many situations. So let's just talk about the price for the sake of this video. Now, as an example, how would an escalation clause be worded? Let's talk about that. Well, if you want to offer the seller the best price possible, what you'll need to do is you'll need to determine the difference between the next, let's say you're willing to jump over the highest offer, and that's what's written in this escalation clause. Well, you'll need to determine a gap between the highest offer that's on the table right now and what you're willing to pay. It's usually got to be somewhat significant. Otherwise, why would a seller even look at it, right? So I would advise most people to say that you're going to bump up the highest offer, if you're willing to go above it anyway, let's say by at least $500, maybe even $1,000, because you've got to make it significant. You got to make that buyer want to go with your offer, because there could be some other terms that may entice the buyer, the seller. You got to make that seller go with your offer, because there may be some other terms in that contract if they got 5 or 6 offers on the table that will entice these sellers to go with somebody else. So let's say like $500,000. Another part of the escalation clause that you're going to have to include is the maximum price that you are willing to go up to. Now, in the case of an escalation clause, it's always a good idea to have a very, very educated guess as to what the appraised value of the home is that you're looking at, because anytime you're going to go above that, you are required to pay the difference, and there's not going to be any getting out of the contract because the home didn't appraise. You can always try that with a seller, but in a bidding war, you're going to be the one that's going to have to make up the difference. I mean, let's just be realistic. You're going to have that kind of cash on hand as a buyer to make it up. So you don't want that to be too high. Now, let's say this comes into play, though. Let's say this house is listed at $250,000. Let's say you put in there that you are willing to bump your offer about $1,000 above. Let's put it. You got to put not about. You got to put it in writing. So $1,000. So you're going to go $1,000 higher than the highest offer that they have. So let's say the other highest offer they have is $270,000. Well, that means your offer is going to come in at $271,000. All right. And of course, let's say you have a ceiling of $280,000. Well, that's good, because that way the escalation clause will benefit you as a buyer, because you will come in with a $271,000 contract, and you would have gone up to $280,000, and the seller will know that. But in order for this escalation clause to come into play, the seller has to prove to you what the highest offer is, so that it would bump yours up. So don't let any seller say to you, oh, well, you know, we got this offer at $285,000, and you say, well, let's see that offer. And it should be written in your escalation clause, hopefully, that proof has to be given. Because if they say, well, I don't feel like showing it to you, well, then you're not doing that, because they're just trying to play with you to get more money out of you. You've got to ask for everything in writing. It's got to be in writing. So again, also, you don't want to have anything in there that's going to hold the seller to an appraised value, because if there's a risk in there like that, the seller wants as little risk as possible and as much money as possible. They are probably not going to go with you with your escalation clause offer. They're going to go with somebody else. So this is basically what it is. If you as a buyer get the contract where you use an escalation clause, you have won that house at auction. Okay, you've won that home at auction. Could be a good and a bad thing depending upon how it was done. If you did it with an escalation clause and you didn't pay any more than you had to, which meant the seller had to show proof of the highest offer to you, then good for you, because you can scrutinize that offer, make sure it's a legitimate offer, and that you didn't pay any more than you had to. Because if you don't use an escalation clause, you'd have to go in there maybe with a $280,000 offer, and then you're going to pay like $9,000 more than you should have for that particular home, and nobody's going to feel good about that except for the seller. And escalation clauses are all about buyers. It's nice when a seller sees it, but from a seller's point of view, when they see that and the buyer wins it with that, it usually means that the buyer might have paid more, but they didn't. So this escalation clauses, well-written escalation clauses, which I use, by the way, really do benefit your buyer clients. And it's so important that you utilize this tool in today's market, because if you don't, as you see from the example I just gave you, you could significantly overpay for a home, pay more than you have to. You don't want to pay any more than you have to, right, to obtain that home. And of course, make sure if you're in the market for buying a new home, you're going to review or selling, buying or selling, review those videos on due diligence and due diligence money and timeframes, and also earnest money deposits that I have put out recently. They're very, very important. You got to know all this stuff. Real estate is so complicated. Make sure you work with an experienced realtor. And of course, hey, I'm available. You can text me anytime. 240-205-0417. That's my direct mobile. Click through on Mike Young Real Estate. Wherever you see this video, you can probably find my contact information there as well. And of course, get in with our groups, okay? Have a lot of fun in the groups. We have some really great communities, especially Wake Forest Community Information, which has like 53,000 plus members, and Raleigh Community Information, which is getting up there with like 36,000 members. So just between those two groups alone, we got about 100,000 people. And if you're a business too, by the way, we really do support you. You can post subject to our policies and guidelines, which are in the about description of the group. Click on those, read those once per 24 hours generally, but there's a bunch of other little guidelines you need to know about. And also you can join as your page, just so you guys know, in Raleigh Community Information, but you can only join as an individual account in Wake Forest Community Information, although you can always share some of your posts from your business page into Wake Forest Community Information. So that's about it for today, and hope you guys learned a lot. Let me know if you did. If you have any other specific questions or ideas for videos, by all means, please put them down there in the comments below. I want to hear. We just did escalation clauses today, but I'd love to hear other stuff that you guys want to do. I will do videos and all this stuff. Try to get a new video out about every once a week. And like, I'm out of focus now. How did that happen? My hand. Woo. Yeah, I'm still out of focus. Oh well, time to go. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.